The use of conventional flap gates on dikes in a coastal wetland ecosystem, by its nature, excludes the pulse of the tide, saltwater, and tidal scouring action. This invariably results in the loss of estuarine plants, fish, shellfish, waterfowl, and wildlife, followed by an increase in the growth of tall reed grass and resultant marsh fires. Loss of the tidal action also results in sediment infilling of channels, followed by sheet flooding of the marsh and low-lying streets and property, obstructed drainage channels, and a loss of mosquito-eating fish. This loss is followed by a significant increase in objectionable mosquito breeding. In contrast to the conventional flap gate, the self-regulating tide gate, SRT, is a very simple patented mechanical device which is a float-actuated water control valve. It automatically opens and closes using no external source of power, while permitting reciprocal flow of water through its culvert. The SRT always allows upland storm water runoff and creek water to discharge when the tide is low. The conventional one-way gate closes when the tide rises, thereby preventing salt water from returning to the diked watercourse or wetland. In contrast, the SRT can be adjusted to allow tide water to flow into the culvert, thereby feeding the channel or marsh behind the dike. Because the SRT is located on the outfall or tidal side of the dike's culvert, its float system responds to any tidal threat by closing the gate to incoming water when the tide reaches the design high water level. Sensing the storm water elevation, the SRT closes early, thereby preserving a relatively large volume of potential water storage capacity behind the dike should it be needed for detention of upland runoff associated with the coastal storm. In this way, the SRT simultaneously maintains flood protection to the upland area while allowing tidal flushing of the low-lying wetlands. Restored tidal flushing of the wetlands will help restore the estuarine ecosystem, eliminates marsh fires, both dry peat fires and Phragmites or tall reed grass fires, greatly reduces mosquito breeding, reduces sheet flooding of the marsh, and restores upland drainage through rescoured marsh channels. Because of the increased tidal prism to the restored wetland, deepening of the downstream channel and improved navigation will result as well. The SRT in normal tide sequence. Under normal tide conditions, the SRT acts as a conventional flap gate, allowing estuary drainage. As the rising tide floats the gate leaf up, it allows the incoming tide to flood the estuary basin, as would naturally occur if the dike were not present. At the user preset level, the tide begins to close the gate leaf, thus limiting the estuary flood level to a predetermined height. At normal high tide, the gate is fully closed, excluding any further tidal flooding. As the tide recedes, the gate leaf floats on the falling tide and allows the estuary level to lower. The SRT then again acts as a conventional tide gate. Estuary drainage resumes as it would in its natural state. The SRT in storm sequence. Under normal tide conditions, the SRT acts as a conventional flap gate, allowing estuary drainage. As the rising tide floats the gate leaf up, it allows the incoming tide to flood the estuary basin, as would naturally occur if the dike were not present. At the user preset level, the tide begins to close the gate leaf, thus limiting the estuary flood level to a predetermined height. At normal high tide, the gate is fully closed, excluding any further tidal flooding. When the tide exceeds the normal high tide level, the gate automatically locks in the closed position to prevent gate leaf motion due to surges. As the tide recedes, the side flaps open to allow drainage of the estuary. The main cover is now restricted to a partially open position until the next tide sequence begins. On the next incoming tide, the gate unlocks and resumes its normal tide sequence.